Welcome to the final episode of our journey through Pilgrim's Progress. Through many dangers, toils and snares we have already come, and all that remains now in these final two chapters are for the pilgrims to experience death and then enter into the glory of the celestial city. So first of all, let's notice this. Death is unavoidable. Death is unavoidable. The pilgrims, Christian and hopeful, are almost at the end of their journey now. They can see ahead of them the gates of the celestial city. However, between them and the gates, there was one final obstacle. They come to a river, and there's no bridge to pass over it, and the river is very deep, and the pilgrims are bewildered about what is the way forward. So they turn to the two shining ones, these angels who are accompanying them to the celestial city, and they ask them what they must do. And the men answered them, "You must go through the river, or you cannot enter in at the gate." The pilgrims ask, "Is there another way to get to the gate, avoiding the river?" And the men reply, "Yes, but only two since the foundation of the world have been permitted to tread that path, namely Enoch and Elijah. Nor shall any others go that way until the last trumpet shall sound." They have no choice. They have to go through the river. And of course, this river is a picture of death. It is the last enemy, and it is the final obstacle which stands between the believer and their entrance into glory. And it is unavoidable. Unless the last trumpet sounds and Christ returns first, this is something that we have to face sooner or later. Death is unavoidable. And secondly, we see that death can be fearful. Or more accurately, we should say the process of dying can be fearful. And at this point, we're told that both Christian and hopeful, but especially Christian, began to lose heart. The prospect of having to enter this river is fearful to them. A Christian asks the men if the waters are all the same depth, and they replied, "No, you shall find it deeper or shallower, just as you believe in the King of the city." And the point is, not everyone experiences the process of dying in the same way. And what it will be like for us correlates with the strength of our faith in Jesus. Some Christians approach death in a calm, settled way with their faith firmly in Jesus. But others, true believers though they are greatly troubled by doubts and fears. And that is what happens to Christian here. When he enters the river, very quickly he gets into great difficulty. Firstly, his faith falters. He began to sink, and crying out to hopeful, he shouted, "I am sinking in deep waters. The billows are rolling over my head. All his waves are crashing over me." His faith falters. And following on from that, then his assurance disappears. He says, "Ah, my friend, the sorrows of death have compassed me about. I shall not see the land which flows with milk and honey." And with that, a great darkness and horror fell upon Christian, so that he could not see ahead of him. He also, in great measure, lost his senses, so that he could neither remember nor talk coherently of any of those sweet refreshments which he had met with along the way of his pilgrimage. But all the words that he spoke still tended to manifest his horror of mind and heart fears that he would die in that river and never obtain entrance at the gate. His assurance disappears. And furthermore, his guilt troubles him. Bunyan writes, Christian was much in troublesome thoughts concerning the sins that he had committed, both before and since he began to be a pilgrim. And it's a very realistic description of how fearful it can be to face up to the reality of death, even for a genuine believer. As death draws near, and as our strength declines, and as our faculties dwindle, there can be this final assault of the enemy, whereby a Christian's faith falters, and their assurance disappears, and their guilt troubles them. But finally in this chapter, we also see this. Jesus will deliver us. Jesus will deliver us. And thankfully, Christian is not alone in the river. His friend, Hopeful, is with him. And Hopeful speaks words of comfort and assurance and encouragement to Christian, pointing him to Jesus, assuring him of Christ's grace to save him and to bring him all the way home to glory. And though Christian for a while was not persuaded by these things, eventually these things convinced his mind and comforted his heart. And Bunyan writes, Then I saw in my dream that Christian was deep in thought for a while. Hopeful then added this word, Take courage, Jesus Christ makes you whole. And with that, Christian cried out with a loud voice, Oh, I see him again. And he tells me, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. And then they both took courage. And after that, the enemy was as still as a stone and could no longer hinder them. Christian therefore felt firm ground to stand upon and found that the rest of the river was but shallow. Thus they both crossed over the river. Death is unavoidable. Death can be fearful. And in the face of it, a Christian can find that for a time at least, their faith falters, their assurance disappears, their guilt troubles them. But Jesus will deliver us. And he delivers us because he himself has gone through the experience of death. And he has come out of the other side of it into resurrection life. And he can bring us through safely as well. Spurgeon writes, Brothers and sisters, if you are in Christ, do not be afraid to die, for dying grace shall be given to you for your dying moments. Having been brought safely through that river of death, all that remains now is for the pilgrims to enter the celestial city. They have to walk up a hill to get to the gates of the city, but they find that it's easy for them to do so. This is not like the hill difficulty. All struggling and striving is now behind them, and they make their way quickly and easily up the hill, speaking of heaven as they do so, excited about what is before them. And they turn to the shining ones, these angels who are accompanying them, and they ask them, what will we do in the holy city? And we can sum up their answer by saying 4 things. Firstly, they will enter into greater joy. The shining ones answered, You will there receive the comforts of all your toil and have joy for all your sorrows. You will reap what you have sown, even the fruit of all your prayers and tears and sufferings for the King along the way. In that place you will wear crowns of gold and enjoy the perpetual sight and vision of the Holy One, for there you will see him as he is. The pilgrims, as they enter the holy city, will enter into greater joy, the pinnacle of which is to see Christ face to face, to see him as he is, and to be with him forever. And along with that greater joy, they will also enter into greater service. And the shining ones continue, you shall also serve him whom you desired to serve while in the world, though with much difficulty because of the infirmity of your flesh. There you shall continually worship him with praise and shouting and thanksgiving. There your eyes shall be delighted with seeing him, and your ears with hearing the pleasant voice of the Mighty One. In glory, God's people will serve and worship him better than we have been able to do so here, unhindered by sin and weakness. Our service and worship of God will reach to heights that we cannot even imagine here and now. And as well as that, the pilgrims will enter into greater fellowship. The shining ones say, there you shall find your friends again who have gone there before you, and you shall joyfully receive everyone who follows you into that holy place. That river of death rudely interrupts the fellowship that we enjoy with other believers here. But when we get to the other side of the river, when we get to the holy city, we will enter into greater fellowship there. As the hymn puts it, and if our fellowship below in Jesus be so sweet, what height of rapture shall we know when round his throne we meet? And Spurgeon has written these words, if we have full faith, we shall think with great joy of the dear ones who have gone in to see the King in his beauty. And instead of saying mournfully, they are dead, we shall exclaim triumphantly, they are now beyond the reach of death. Instead of supposing that we have lost them, we shall realize that they have only preceded us a little while. We are on the road and shall soon reach home, and blessed shall be the day when we rejoin them in glory. And then finally, in the holy city, the pilgrims will enter into greater glory. The shining ones say, there also you shall be clothed with glory and majesty, fit to accompany the King of glory. And indeed, that is what then happens. They get to the gates of the city, and each pilgrim handed in their certificate, which they had received at the beginning of their journey. These certificates were then carried to the King, who, when he had read them, said, where are the men? And it was answered, they are standing outside the gate. The King then commanded, open the gates to all who are righteous. Allow the faithful to enter in. Bunyan writes, now I saw in my dream that these two men went in at the gate. And behold, as they entered, they were transfigured, and they were arrayed with clothing that shone like gold. Some met them with harps and crowns, which were given to the pilgrims. The harps were given for worship, and the crowns were given as a token of honour. Then I heard in my dream that all the bells in the city rang again for joy, and that it was said to the pilgrims, "Enter into the joy of your Lord." I also heard Christian and hopeful themselves singing with a loud voice, saying, "Blessing and honour and glory and power be unto him who sits upon the throne, and unto the Lamb, forever and ever." Now just as the gates were opened to let the men in, I looked in after them, and behold, the city shone like the sun. The streets also were paved with gold, and on them walked many men with crowns on their heads, palms in their hands, and golden harps to sing praises with. There were also some angelic beings with wings, and they sang back and forth without intermission, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord." After that, they closed up the gates. When I had seen all of this, I wished that I myself was among them. And one day we will be, if we're in Christ. And at last we will enter the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem, and be with Christ and enter into that greater joy, that greater service, that greater fellowship, and that greater glory.